And when you went through integrating the elementary school and the high school, you said you and your siblings were okay about what you were doing. You were just going to school. What about the white children and their parents?
Oh, well, some of them were simple. They run around calling you names, and that's all they did. But sooner or later, then it was the funniest kind of a community. You know, they do that, calling you all kinds of names, and then the next thing you know, we were playing baseball together. So it was just, they test you. I think sometimes people were testing you to see how you would react. When you just look at them and say, well, I'm going, come on, we're going to play a game. You in? Yeah, we're in. So that was it. And they were Italian family, though. There was mostly Italian family. There were my brothers, and there were 4 of them. And then there were 4 Italian boys. There were a couple of Irish kids. And they made up most, because the girls weren't out there playing with them. But they made up most of the baseball team. And they fought together, and then they played baseball together, and then they kicked anybody's butt that came in and meddled. So it was a community. Didn't make any difference, The kids did not make a difference about who they were, except whenever the adults were around. Now, the adults seemed to have more of a problem sometimes. And then there were some that didn't, like the woman who was the Irish woman. She was always baking a cake for everybody. And we lived all in the same block. I mean, it wasn't like we were miles apart or something like that.
What was it like, or what impact did it have that this was a primarily Quaker community?
Well, I think it's because the Quakers were there and in charge of everything. In the level of running the community in offices and so forth. I think that made a difference in how the other people acted, because in a lot of times they worked for those people, so they had a responsibility of integrating themselves together and working together, because it didn't make any difference. My father might be in charge of something, and other people would be working under his tutelage, because it would be for Mrs. Howe or Mrs. Chandler or one of the other members of the McElvains.
So the Quakers, because of their beliefs, set a certain standard as far as integration and equality, et cetera, et cetera.
They set the standard because they actually ran those communities. They had the money. They had the jobs. They made the point of helping people to get where they wanted to be. And they made no difference, but they made sure that you understood if you created a problem, then their help might be a little less present. So, if you really wanted to move forward and be part of what was going on, then you had to behave yourself in terms of race and so forth.
Was there there was no distinction that they made between the fact that they were white and you were black?
No.
None at all?
No.
So if you had grown up and wanted to marry one of their sons?
Now, that might have been a problem. I don't know. That never came up. But that might have been a problem. Well, and I say that because now Mrs. Howe had 2 daughters, but they were a very wealthy family, and one of the daughters married a Virginia man. And at one time, now I wasn't there, but my mother told me one time at a dinner party that my mother was serving the dinner for them, because she was the cook and the server and everything. My sister Marie worked with her periodically doing that when they had a big dinner or something like that. The man from Virginia, Mr. Young, he made some remark about niggers. Well, Mrs. Howe almost had apoplexy. They would do not use those words at my table in my house. She admonished him right away. And I think because of that kind of, it was almost like a closed community, because around us, my sister Marie would say, well, heck, when I was going to school in Westchester and had to catch the bus, I got called nigger every day. She said, but then after I gave a couple of them a black eye, they cut it out.
I mean, you laugh about it, but it sounds like in some ways a fairly tough environment for a kid to grow up in.
It may have been. I guess it was. It was. It probably was. But, our father taught us that we were worth being who we were. And you had to be who you knew you were, not what someone else thought you were. And, with that kind of thinking, and, we were strong and warriors too, so we just, it's a funny thing, we could all fight like little tigers, each other, and then let somebody else come on the block and start to get into fight. We all double team that person coming on the block. So that was like a little island of people who learned to get along with one another through battles and peacemaking and whatever. We just had a way of doing it. But when Marie went to Western, I didn't have the same problem because I went to another high school. I went to Berwyn. Now, I knew that there were people who were prejudiced. No, I mean, you can tell, you can pick it up. It is not a question. You can pick it up right away. I mean, they give themselves away so quickly. But by that time, I had gotten my mind set to what I wanted to do. And I felt like, hey, you have a problem. That is your problem. I do not care to participate with it. So go on and do whatever you want to do because I'm going on down the road.
But you lived in a community where you had those kinds of choices, as
Sure.
opposed to Southern communities.
That's true.
Where you wouldn't have had those kinds of choices.
No, I would have probably gotten killed. I would have probably gotten killed.
Why do you
because
say
my
that?
nature is not to be walked on. You may walk on me, but you can look out because I'm going to get you. I'm going to get you.
So you feel that
I'm not going to kill you, but I'm going to make you sorry you ever knew my name. And I can't help it sometimes. And I've had some instances in my growing years and in my elder years when things have happened. And I remind people, I said, you've got a problem, and it's not mine. I really would like you to get it straightened out and get away from me because I don't want to hurt you. Because the next thing I do, I might pick up on something and give you a nice whack across your head, help you get your brains unscrambled. I mean, it's just, it's that kind of thing that comes over you. Then you say, well, you can't do that, Hazel. You go to jail. So you haven't made any progress when you do that. And my father would say, no, that's not smart. You just quietly walk away. And then after you have walked away, you may consider what other avenues may be available to you. And one day you'll look up and you'll be in charge, and here'll come that character that thought they were going to walk over top of you. And there you are. They got to come by you.
I think a lot of young people, when they hear elders talk about, African American elders talk about their childhoods, for the most part, a lot of them are talking about their childhood in the South, and
yes.
so there's an image of what it was like to be a black person in the United States growing up in the 1920s and 30s, and whatever. But they don't hear as much about what it was like to grow up in some of the black communities or communities that were not primarily black but northern. And so what you're sharing is tremendously valuable in that sense.
But we were fortunate to live in the country. Now, when you get into town, it was a little different because in the town, the black people were segregated to one section of the town, and then the white people were in another section of the town. So that there was not a lot, the only mixing was when you went to work. So in the towns it was different. But being in the country, there was no place to segregate you to. So, you built your house, or you bought a house, or you rented a house. Most of the time it was renting. You rented a house wherever a house was available. And if someone else was there of another race, if they wanted to move, that was their problem because you were going to be there. You paid your rent. And they did. And those were railroad homes, too. They were homes that were built for the railroad workers, and then they would move on. So they were that kind of home. They were 3-story homes, a cellar, first floor, and a second floor, bedrooms up on the second floor. And then for the most part, in the beginning, they had outhouses until we moved the bathroom inside and so forth. So it was, and everybody had the same thing. It wasn't different, but it was in the country, and I think that made the difference. Because in town, it was a whole different ballgame. Because in town, when you were black, you could only sit in a certain part of the movie house.
And how did you react when you first ran into that?
I didn't go to the movies. I didn't need to go. Why did I need to go in there? And when I finally did go, because I worked my way through high school, I worked for the guys, Mr. and Mrs. Guy, and I lived with them and worked for them. But Mrs. Guy would take me to the movies. Well, she'd take me to the movies, and I'd sit where she sat. I saw all people looking, peering and peeping, and I just sit right there, just quietly. They're like saying, so what? You know, I'm not going anywhere, but she's not going to let me.
So you just decided you were going to sit where you wanted to sit.
Well, she sat with me. She took me there, so that's where we sat. Now, if they didn't like it, they could move away. And that'd be good for me anyhow. I didn't want them next to me either. With prejudiced people, I just have a problem with them in the sense that I say to them, you got a problem. Hey, I think you better solve it because the world is turning. And you're going to be left dropping off the edge because you're stupid. So get smart and figure out everything's an accident of birth. There but for the grace of God. Go you.
What was your first experience that you can recall of recognizing that there was a racial difference?
Well, I knew there was a racial difference because we got called names frequently by our colleagues, young kids, you know. I knew about that. But the first time I understood it in terms of being used to prevent me from doing something that I wanted to do that I felt was for my benefit, well, it was two times. Well, first time was when I went to Philadelphia to take the exam to be for nursing. And Mom said, I'm hungry. Let's stop over here at this hot dog stand and get a hot dog. And I said, okay. So we walked up to the stand, and we were about the second group of people there. And then here comes some white people, and the woman walked over and waited on the white people, walked right by her. So the next time she came by, and she walked by us again. So finally she got back to us. So I went and made the order and so forth. And I guess it was my father in me, because I had thought about it and I was going to get her. There was no question I was going to get her. I waited until she got the order and brought it up to me, and I said to her, now, you eat it. And told Mom, let's go. Mm-hmm. And the next time, the other time, and I think the more important time, was when Miss Fritz, who was she was the visiting nurse, county nurse for that community, and she was very good to us. She was very good to everyone. She was a white woman, but she was very good. She took care of us, made sure our teeth were. We went to the dentist at least once a year, and that we got any kind of ailment taken care of. And she liked the idea that I was interested in nursing. And so she was helping me to think about that. She said, well, we can do this. You got to take the exam, and then we'll go over to Westchester Hospital, Chester County Hospital, which was in Westchester, and they have a student program. They'll get you in there. So she took me. Well, the director of nursing met us and said to her and myself, we've never had a black person in our club program, and we never will. I thought Miss Fritz was going to have apoplexy, but we got out of there, and she said, I know what we're going to do. So she said, I have a friend in New York. Harlem Hospital School of Nursing has an excellent program. I'm going to get you in there. And
how did you feel when you heard that woman say that to you?
Well, it hurt. It hurt. It really hurt. It made me feel very, like somehow I was less. But it also made me really angry. And just like, I'm like my father upside down. I said, okay, there will be a day, and I'll get you. And I did. And that's terrible. But that's a terrible way to have. But I held that thing in my heart until I got her. I did, and it was 5 years later. But I made sure I got her.
How'd you get her?
I went over there, and she had to hire me then, because they had passed a rule of law that she did. She hired me then. I went to work for her. I worked 1 week, and I quit. I already had another job. I was already working in Philadelphia at the Veterans Hospital. I did that to fix her. That's terrible. But it just made me so mad. And I never forgot it. And, you know, and that's the way I am about things. But now I've learned to channel that anger a little differently. I don't let myself get uptight about it now. When people got a problem, that's their problem. Because that's what my father kept saying to me, Hazel, it's their problem. It's not yours. Don't take it on. Because you're shortchanging yourself when you do. I said, but, you know, I got to get them. I got to get them. But I've gotten over that. I don't do that now. I don't do that anymore. I just say, you got a problem? Tough. Mm-hmm. But you can be sure of one thing. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying. And you're going to have to come by me eventually. So it might be wise to get over that. It might be wise. Because I won't do anything to you. I'll let you do it to yourself. And you know, that's good, bad. It's not a good thing to do. But I feel like, you know, why should I waste my time on an idiot? There's not one thing I can do about my race, about my color or anything. The Lord put me here. Here I am. Now, if you got a problem with that, get out of my space. Find yourself another place.